Hello, my name is Zane, and today I'm presenting my research titled, What's in a Name? Exploring CA Certificate Control. Authentication is one of the core security objectives in today's web. In the simplest case, web clients and servers can directly authenticate through some challenge and response protocol. However, in practice, due to the scale and complexity of the modern web, authentication is delegated to certificate authorities, also known as CAs. CAs perform server identity verification and then use CA certificates to sign a leaf certificate that vouches for the identity of a server's public key. Servers can then authenticate by presenting this certificate to clients if a client trusts the CA that signed the certificate. The work that I'm presenting today examines the mapping between CA certificates and the CAs that operate them. To better understand why this is important, let's look at the distrust of the CA Symantec. Symantec was formerly the largest CA, and in 2018, it was revoked from all major browser root stores as a result of numerous certificate issuance problems. However, the process of removing trust in Symantec was surprisingly difficult because, believe it or not, it was not clear which trusted certificates were actually operated by Symantec. So as an example, here are two real root certificate subjects, only one of which was operated by Symantec. As you can see, these root certificate names are nearly identical, but neither of them provide a clear link to Symantec. And as it turns out, despite their nearly identical naming, the first root was operated by Komodo, and the second root was operated by Symantec. In parallel to distrusting Symantec roots, several intermediate certificates signed by Symantec were actually whitelisted because they were operated independently by Google and Apple. These intermediates continue to be trusted by browsers, despite the fact that the root of their certificate chain was not trusted. So what do we learn from this incident? Here are three takeaways. First, trust in TLS authentication occurs at the level of CAs, but it is enforced at the level of CA certificates. Second, there are no guarantees that the subject identity in a CA certificate reflects the operator of the CA certificate. Third, intermediate CA certificates may be operated independently from their root CA certificate. So this means we need to not only understand the operators of root certificates, we also need to know the operators of intermediate CA certificates, which are usually not present in root certificate stores. So unfortunately, there has been no prior academic work on this problem. And the closest thing we have to a solution is the Common CA database, also known as the CCADB. And this is organized by Mozilla as a centralized location for CAs to provide their policy and audit documents. The CCADB has an owner field for each CA certificate, but this field represents an administrative owner, which may or may not overlap with operational control. For example, Let's Encrypt has several cross-signed certificates that are owned by Distrust and CCADB, even though they are operated by Let's Encrypt. The other issue with CCADB is that it provides incomplete coverage of CA certificates and misses 20% of the CA issuers trusted by major OS and browser root stores. So CCADB is a good start in our quest to identify the operators of CA certificates, but unfortunately, it is not designed for this purpose. So what can we do? Our approach is to measure different operational aspects of a CA and then group CA certificates based on shared operational features. The first set of operational features are derived directly from certificates. So we develop a novel certificate fingerprinting technique, which I'll describe shortly, that captures the issuance infrastructure of a CA. We can also extract URLs from certificates that represent the associated network infrastructure that CAs operate. Our third operational perspective comes from CA audit documents, which are reports written by auditors who visit CA data centers and detail the certificates under a CA's control. So we automatically extract these certificates and use them as features in our feature set. We then heuristically combine these features to generate clusters of CA certificates under shared operational control. The next step is for us to label the owners of these certificates. So for this step, we carefully apply CCADB labels to these clusters. And after label correction and expansion, we finally generate a best effort data set of CA certificates and their CA operators. So now that you have a high-level overview of our approach, let's expand a little bit on the details. So first, I'd like to point out that we developed a new certificate fingerprinting technique that aims to detect artifacts of certificate issuance software and its configurations. Our goal is, given a large pile of certificates, to distinguish the certificate entropy caused by issuance software and distinguish that from all other certificate entropy, which can be caused by required randomness or user-controlled values. Our insight here is that certificate data is organized as an ordered tree, and issuance infrastructure largely controls the structure and order of the tree, while other entropy occurs primarily in the leaf nodes of the tree. So let's walk through an example to see what this means. Here we have an incomplete contrived certificate which is structured as an ordered tree. We can see a few fields that generate entropy independent of issuance software. These are things like validity period of a certificate or the actual subject name in a certificate, as well as the signature. We can also see that many of the remaining fields are sources of entropy that do depend on issuance infrastructure. So for example, the type and order of extensions are not controlled by end users and are configured by certificate issuance software. Similarly, the signature type and subject field types are likely dependent on issuance software configuration. So our fingerprint essentially captures the structure of the certificate, ignoring all leaf node values besides OID leaf values, which represent enumerable fields that are often controlled by issuance software. So what do we do with these fingerprints? To utilize them, we look at each issuer's issuance profile, which is the full set of fingerprints that are generated by a given CA issuer. On the left side of this graph, we have the top 20 fingerprints issued by DigiCert, according to CCADB labels. And each column represents an issuance profile. So here we have highlighted two different issuance profiles. We find 25 issuers that match the issuance profile on the left and 8 issuers that match the issuance profile on the right. And by looking across these issuance profiles presented here, we can see a pretty distinct divide. All the profiles on the left half are highly similar and have many overlapping fingerprints, while all the profiles on the right half also seem related and they contain a disjoint set of fingerprints. By digging deeper, we can find that the issuers on the left are actually associated with the Belgian citizen CA, which is operated independent of the issuers on the right, which are actually operated by DigiCert. This shows how certificate fingerprints can distinguish between independent issuance infrastructure. Certificate fingerprints are one of 3 data sources in our pipeline. And we heuristically combine them with network infrastructure features and audit-based features to generate clusters of CA certificates with shared operations. The next step in determining CA certificate operators is to use CCADB to clearly label our heuristic clusters. When we apply CCADB labels to the nodes in our heuristic clusters, we find several instances of clusters with conflicting labels. This is not unexpected since CCADB owner labels reflect administrative responsibility rather than operational control. We resolve these conflicts through manual review and correct the labels so that each node accurately reflects operational control. The final step of cluster labeling is label expansion. So we identified clusters with at least 70% majority of labeled nodes and then expand those labels to the remaining unlabeled nodes in the cluster. So now that we have completed our dataset pipeline, we need to evaluate our output dataset to get a sense of its accuracy. Unfortunately, no ground truth data exists. Hence the need for the study, but we were able to come up with an approximate ground truth data set. So this data set comes from CA certificate disclosure bugs for Mozilla's root store that were manually resolved. So Mozilla's root store has a requirement to disclose CA certificates within 7 days. Otherwise a bug is filed if that requirement is not met. So in total, we found 22 issues between May 2014 and July 2019, and these issues spanned 103 CA issuers. Our data set was able to automatically label the CA operator of 48 issuers. Additionally, every unknown issuer that could be labeled by our data set was correctly labeled. And so this yields a 100% specificity and 46% recall. While this is far from perfect, it represents a best effort approach to identifying CA certificate operators. So, what did we find with our data? In the interest of time, I'm going to highlight the key results, but please see the paper for more information. So first, we found a subordinate CA belonging to multi-cert that was improperly reported as being a camera firma CA certificate. And this discovery added to the growing evidence of camera firma's inability to operate a secure CA. And as a result, in early 2021, Google and Mozilla both removed camera firma from their root stores. Second, our data pipeline and manual investigation identified 241 CA certificates with operators that did not match the certificate's CCADB label. So again, this highlights the administrative role of CCADB and its unfitness for determining CA operational control. Finally, we added new CA operator labels for 651 previously unlabeled CA certificates, thus expanding our overall view of the existing CA ecosystem. So to summarize, in this work, we demonstrated that CA certificate names can often have no bearing on who controls them due to CA business transactions and fictitious names. This is true for both root certificates and intermediates. To remedy this situation, we collected an assortment of CA operational measurements to generate a new data set that assigns operator labels to CA certificates. And overall, our work strives to improve CA transparency. This can provide benefits to root store operators who are deciding which CAs to trust, and it can also lead to more accurate research and attribution of CA issues that arise. So thanks for listening. That's the end of my talk. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thanks.